Hey everyone, welcome to Why We Collect episode 4. This week we're going to be talking about trading cards, trading card games, the things we enjoyed from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, even some today now. But today I have two guests with me. Of course, Retro Ryan.
What's up, guys? Just a little information about me. I do a stream every Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard, where I play lots of retro footage, video game toy commercials. I take game requests and I play cover songs on guitar. So you can catch me there. Happy to be here tonight.
The other guest tonight is Zombie JLT1.
Hey everyone, Zombie JLT1, your supernatural gamer and self-proclaimed gaming beautician. I will be returning back to streaming soon. Got some surprises in store for all you guys out there. I do pickup videos, live streaming, of course, and hopefully be bringing back two of the podcasts that I used to co-host, one with Retro Ryan and BFG, of course, Retroactive Trio, and with my supernatural bro Josh, Pokemon Artcast. So stay tuned for those.
You heard it here first, folks. All right,
Oh
anyway.
yeah.
So, guys, this was a big part of our collecting journey was collecting cards. The thrill of opening a pack of whatever card, whether it be sports, memorabilia from movies, uh, you know, cartoons, you name it, there was a card series out there for it. Part of the fun was just opening up the pack, seeing what cards you got, maybe checking out if you got a hologram or a lithograph card. But guys, where do we want to start with this?
For me, I mean, it starts with like Marvel Universe cards and the Marvel Masterpiece ones. Those were the ones I was addicted to and obsessed to with getting because I think so we all love toys, but you get a toy, you know what you're gonna get, right? Isn't there that mystery and magic of what's gonna be in that pack when you open it? And whether you're gonna get one of those limited edition holograms, and what's in the packs. I loved to as a child, like just learning about all the different superheroes through getting all the Marvel trading cards because you get so many you may have never seen before in a comic because they had all the obscure characters in the
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Universe packs, season through season as they did those in each series. Um, so, and I also love to read on the back, just like you would have if it was a baseball card or any other sport. You have their stats, so you have their special powers, what they could do, some information about them, their height, their weight, whatever. They were smart enough to set that up just like it was something you're used to seeing with an athlete's card, but for a superhero. So I mean, that was my first addiction to trading cards. I don't know about you guys, but that was mine.
Marvel cards were definitely the prior to getting into trading card games, that was definitely one of the more universal forms of card collecting, at least where I was growing up and where I was going to school. I mean, some people had baseball cards, football cards. I collected a little bit of that, uh, like Don Russ or whatever that brand's called, Fleer. Um, just because that was the in thing to kind of do at that time. But when Marvel started releasing their card packs, almost everybody I knew was into collecting those. And you can tell who was the hardcore collectors and who was kind of like the mediocre ones. Yeah, maybe I'll buy a pack here and there. Whereas some of us were like, we're saving up our allowance to go buy a whole box
Yeah.
and divvy up the packs that way. And it got to the point where X-Men cards especially were almost forms of currency in my school. We used to trade those for just about anything. Hey, help me do my homework. Okay, give me your holographic Wolverine and I'll do it. Like it was
Yeah.
just that form of
Yep.
bargaining. And if you knew what the more expensive cards were, that's where you had that advantage. And little nerds like me, we totally took advantage of it. You want a passing grade in your class? Okay, I want your holographic Wolverine, or I want the first edition, Omega Red or whatever character it was. I want your Deadpool card, that kind of stuff. And it was crazy because we were exchanging that for favors, but then also we were collecting and trading them as well. It got to the point where X-Men cards were so big, they got outlawed. They got
Yeah.
banned from my
Oh,
school.
wow, that's interesting.
Wow.
That was one of the first things I remember as a kid being banned from our school specifically. Is that we don't want to see any X-Men trading cards. We don't want to see even the cards that came with our Toy Biz figures, because like you said, Ryan, you would read the backgrounds and you kind of learn more about the characters based on those, which
Yep.
is what we used to do. Um, and of course, if you read comics with us, then that was another leg up on who's who. But yeah, those were just insanely popular. And I just remember people going nuts just trying to get those. It was kind of like the Cabbage Patch uh revival almost, because people were going nuts trying to get packs, trying to get that particular card. And it was fun, but yeah, until they got banned, I mean, we're like, well, damn, there goes one of our happiness, our happy things right there.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because you had trading cards and then Pogs. So they systematically had these things that would get banned from school because it was drawing kids' attentions away from learning. But like I had a unique aspect of how things were for me was because, at the time my dad opened up a comic book shop back in like 92. So of course we would go and order boxes for the shop. So we would maybe take 4 or 5 of them home, open them up, get a complete set, and that was what we would sell in the shop besides the individual packs. And but yeah, the Marvel cards were so amazing. The Masterpiece, you had like all these great known artists that were coming in to just draw these amazing stills or and of different characters from even just not even just Marvel. You had DC as well. Um they were so good. And I just remember flipping through them and my friends all like just having binders of their sets and everything.
Oh
I didn't
yeah.
Hmm.
collect too many of the Marvel stuff. I had like certain cards I enjoyed, but like most of my stuff was more the movie stuff, the more like the Terminator, the Turtles,
Right.
So
the
I was into the Marvel Universe ones. The turning point for me when my mind started getting blown, and I really had to have every single card in the series, Marvel masterpieces.
oh yeah.
Whatever artists and painters they had do those, these were like some of the most beautiful paintings I've ever seen, where every superhero was in a dynamic pose, just
Hmm.
an incredible painting of them, and in
Hmm.
card form. And so even if it was a character you otherwise wouldn't have cared that much about, you wanted every card because they looked that good and they were printed that well. And to have them all in your book to flip through was just eye candy. So that's when I think if it hadn't been for the Marvel masterpieces, I would have been casual still. Even with the Marvel universe, I liked them. I wasn't hooked. By the masterpieces, I was hooked.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, because
definitely.
you. Oh, go ahead.
Alex Ross was definitely one of those artists that had like this
Okay, good. I'm glad you knew
amazing.
the names because I unfortunately
Yeah.
don't remember the name.
To bounce off what Ryan was saying, there definitely was something appealing about the masterpiece cards, because you had your typical look like printed on uh cardboard stock or paper stock, whatever that material is called. It was kind of like rough,
Cardstock, yeah.
yeah, cardstock. And the drawings, although were cool, just look like you took a scene out of a comic book and you had those. But the masterpieces with that gloss, that
Yeah,
like finish to them, I
Hmm.
mean, man, I was blown away by that. It's like when you collect toys at the basic level and then you start seeing the McFarlane figures. Like that's quite a jump
yeah,
in terms of style and presentation. And um, those eventually are what pretty much dictated what we did in school, because like I said, we used them as currency. And I mean, you really had to know which were like the rarer cards and which ones weren't. But when you're also as poor lower class as we were, you were just grateful to even have a pack and just be able
Hmm.
to show off what you got. To this day, I have my um I don't know where he is specifically, but my prized card was number 135, the Werewolf by Night
Hmm.
um drawing, and oh man, does he look so freaking awesome compared to his comic book counterpart. So it was quite a jump in terms of artistic presentation, and I was willing to pay the extra bucks just to get packs like that.
It didn't hurt that the women superheroes, or they made absolutely gorgeous, looking like
Mm-hmm.
centerfolds, very very curvy. They accentuated every curve, and the outfits were skin tight. And I mean, as a kid, just looking at those, like oh my god, you never seen Rogue or Sable like looking like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. I have
And
my She-Hulk card somewhere where she's lifting
yeah,
like 1,000 pound barbells and stuff.
and
Yeah.
we can't stress enough how much you would just get them in a binder and flip through them and show your friends, and you'd be like, "Oh, I need that card," and it would just feed. And it was just it's just like that magic of flipping through a comic book, but again, like Zombie said, accentuating the gloss on the cardstock images, even the little imprint that's kind of shiny, that kind of shiny material where they print the superhero's name, even
Mm-hmm.
those on it.
The
Hmm.
foil
Um,
press, yeah.
Yep.
yeah, the foil, dude, they were so well done.
Well, it was really cool too when they started doing the whole thing where you would take the 3x3 sleeve and then like you'd have this giant poster or with all the cards all together making a giant image.
Right. So it was the Fleer Ultra, right? So I always would get the best one, the Pro Fleer Ultra, plastic flip pages,
Hmm.
whatever you call them, to put each card in. And like you said, there'd be three across, right? And then what, three down? So would there be nine on each sleeve or 12?
If you front and back, you would have a total of 18.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But if you just did it individual sleeves, I mean, you'd only get the nine
See, I
per
would just
one
do
sleeve.
individual sleeves. You know why? I was so OCD. I didn't want any kind of bends where they're kind of pushed against each other, and then they almost crease in the middle from the pressure. So I would always just do one in each sleeve. But especially with the masterpieces, I didn't want to, scuff up those or bend the
Mhm.
corners, or you get kind of anal retentive with that.
Oh yeah, of
And it
course.
was it was always funny too whenever you would go in and like buy a box and stuff and you weren't guaranteed you would get a set of the main stuff, but you wouldn't get a set of the chase,
Yeah.
holographic, lenticular, 3D pop cards. So that was always frustrating because there would be like 12 of them usually in a set.
We should also say that to distinguish, the comic book and card stores did do you the service for an upcharge of having those plastic snap cases where they would complete the set for you without the holograms. And then you would see in the display cases where they would have in the hard one-off little cases. What do you call the one? So you put the card in that little hard shell, right? What do they call those that you
Well,
that
they're
you put it into?
the acrylic
Mm-hmm.
sleeves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the display case, that's where they would have all the higher price cards in the acrylics. So you could, if you didn't want to, buy all the packs, which most of us bought the packs, right? But say you want like Marvel Universe Series 1, right? Now that's a kind of maybe a discontinued card pack at that point. Maybe they didn't have any new old stock. So they would have on the counter for sale for maybe like 25 bucks. Oh, you get the whole series, like 1 through 100 of that or whatever it was.
Hmm.
And then you would pay that. And the guy already had assembled a full deck essentially for you. And then you can pick or choose if you had any money left over. Oh, I really want this one hologram of the Thing, or I want this one of Wolverine or Venom or something. So you could pick and choose if you didn't want to have the randomness lottery of getting the packs to open, so.
You mentioned that you and your dad did that, Vince.
Mhm.
Did you guys have many buyers come in that just wanted to buy the complete set like that, or were they more of like cherry picking and buying individual ones?
I mean, you'd have both, honestly. Um, I know that we would put sets together, and then because like that's what you would do. You'd buy the box, you bust it open, you go through everything, you pull out the more expensive cards, you put those aside because those are the ones that are going to make up the money for the box that you spent. Like, because back then it was, I think, $50 for a box. It wasn't that expensive at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but you would have that. Like, I remember. And think about it too, like I'm 11 at this point in time whenever like some of this stuff was going on, and I was playing video games and everything and collecting cards and just being in a comic book shop. But yeah, I do remember people coming in and sometimes they would go, "Well, I want this set or I want these cards because I'm missing." And it's it was cool because like I remember like the second shop my dad ran, we had more sports collectibles as far as like the cards, and we'd have kids coming in all the time to pick up like rookie cards and like open up packs of all the different like Fleer, uh Upper Deck, all that stuff for whatever sports collectibles there were. But it was always fun just like opening stuff up, like just and then seeing what you're
Yeah.
getting. Because you definitely would get a good range in those older boxes compared to like now where it's like you may have like 12 of the same card in the box that you bought. And then you only
Mm-hmm.
maybe get a few to make that whole set, which
You know
sucks
what's cool
because you
with
could even
with the
buy a
binder
box.
I got? What's really cool, one of the binders I got for like those Ultra Pro sleeves is on the spine of it, they actually have a little spot where you can slide in the foil of the package so that essentially if you're indexing these binders on a shelf, you know what pack is the complete set in that binder, which is I
Hmm.
think interesting. Is the binders that I've bought to store all the cards in. So you know what I'm saying? So you open that foil, right? And the cards are inside. Well, you can, if you carefully open it, you can slide that foil in to display on the outside of the binder spine what card sets in there.
That's cool. I haven't actually seen any of that because I'd be too afraid that like if you have like a really expensive card sitting there like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty cool. I have to look at that because I'm more
Well, you
used
know
to
what
the
I
new
mean? No,
Pokemon ones.
it's just the packaging, Vince. So it's like so you know how most kids will just rip that open, right? Rip the packaging open.
Yeah.
If you carefully just pull apart the top and slide the cards out, they have this spot you just slide that plastic in because it shows the card art from that series, right? Like it says Marvel Universe cards.
Right, right.
Then that'll be your like display of what's in that binder. I think that's interesting that they did that.
No, that's very unique. But like I wonder because like even the new with Pokemon, you get binders exclusive to the set that, you can fit every card in the set in it, and it's designed to reflect that without actually having to put the packaging in the side.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how I used to alphabetize and organize my various card collections over the years is I would try to find some way, whether if I put just a generic label on the spine or if it was big enough to house a full card pack, I'd slide that into the center spine and have that reflected. I've got a couple binders that did that. Um, but that's kind of where you start getting more serious about your card collecting, you know. I was one of those kids that was OCD enough, like if I had numbers 1 through 10 and then 15, 22, like I would leave the empty spots in my card
Yeah.
pages just for
Right.
those cards when I get
Yep.
them.
Yep.
That's how you keep track.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, because I used to get the acrylic cases like to put your whole set in. So I did that for my Star Wars wide vision series.
Yeah.
And then I think I did it for, oh man, I had the complete G.I. Joe and Terminator 2 card set. Yeah, I don't know. I was weird about like how I collected because like my dad was the bigger comic book guy. So like all I needed to do if I needed to, I could just go look at his collection, you know? So I tried to get things that were different for me that would be my own unique collecting experience.
So one more thing to differentiate. Let's go back to the acrylic, the little acrylic one-off that you put the one card in that's kind of valuable, right? Well,
Hmm.
there's an elevated version of that too, where you will take a thicker piece of acrylic that has to screw in the top and the bottom and put like a $50 card in that one to distinguish like your $5, $10 cards from your really pricey ones, so that if you drop that thing, you're not going to damage that card. That's how serious we got with like the higher value ones. You would literally have to unscrew this freaking acrylic case. It's that it's that like secure the card in
Hmm.
there. You have to center that card, as we remember, right on the square of the acrylic case, and then snap it together, and then
Hmm.
screw it together even once more. And that's what they would put typically your higher value superhero cards or baseball cards, your rookie cards would get in one of those, or your Jordans, or whatever's going to be the highest value stuff you got. You would save that one special expensive case for those.
Oh yeah, and then now we got, I mean, even back like what early 2000s we had grading at the time. So
Yes.
and then I don't know if you guys we ever did it, but like Beckett was a good source for
Oh
certain
yeah.
certain information on like value on cards back then.
Hmm.
Well,
Beckett,
I never got
Wizard,
the
I
rated
used
ones.
for,
Oh, Wizard's so good. Wizard magazine. Thank you for
Hmm.
yep,
bringing that up.
I use that for my comics and my cards.
Yep. Man, talk about great magazines back then. Wizard.
Oh my God. You would just, dude, you would flip through Wizard magazine. I gotta say, I'm putting Wizard magazine up there with like the eye candy of the ads and the stuff in there to reference your comics and cards. I'm putting that up there with Nintendo Power as one of the best magazines ever. To flip through, dude. That was
Definitely.
like that was like what Playboy was the superheroes, dude, to flip through Wizard magazine. That was the best.
Freaking great
That's,
interviews, articles, everything.
oh
You get
yeah.
free cards in there sometimes, freebies,
That's how I
stuff.
found out about the original Spider-Man movie advertisement being with Leonardo DiCaprio and what's her name from Unhappily Ever After, the redhead. Um, Shoot, her name's not coming to me, but she was also in Terminator 2. She had that little bit part, you know. I forgot her name, but she was set to be Mary Jane in the original movie
Oh
poster.
yeah, I know you're talking about. And that was
And
back when Cameron was still doing Spider-Man.
yeah, exactly.
You'd have interviews with illustrators, comic book story writers. You'd have inside scoops on pictures of like the headquarters of Image Comics, whatever they're doing in Marvel or DC. You'd have all that kind of stuff. Um, and what's cool about, you look back at Nintendo Powers or Wizard, you'd see some things that never even came out. Some things that they thought were going to come out, comics or toys, they didn't make it to market, but they were hyping it up, right? You see stuff like that, the things that never came to be.
Well, I'm gonna hit you with one that I missed a lot, and it was the Toy Fair magazine that Wizard did for a long period of time. That like just being able to see images from the toy fairs that were going on around the world and like upcoming toys and just interviews with like the creators and the the sculptors and everything. It was just such a great magazine for toy collectors, you
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
I
It's just
think
not
that
the
was kind
same.
of I think that's kind of how you identify which IPs really hit the market because it's one thing to kind of start and have either a toy line or a comic book or even a TV show and then just to kind of branch off from there. But several IPs that we grew up with had pretty much everything. And I think that's what added to the excitement of just collecting anything from within those categories, because toy collecting really wasn't a thing as it is now back where I was growing up. And a lot of my friends, I mean, like, yeah, we had our action figures, but that's really all we had them for, was just action figures. Very few of us actually thought about the collector aspect of it. And then we had the cards. Um, that took off more than anything, really.
Mm-hmm.
Comic books were hit and miss with some of us, but I'd been collecting comics for years, so I was already there. And then you start seeing, advertisements for a bunch of different products, like Ryan said, whether they got released or not, and you were just hyped to even know about any of those things. So it was kind of cool to see how some of our favorite, like Spider-Man and X-Men and Venom and all these different characters, were either now being made available through certain products, or we're getting comic book reboots where now the villain's uh the main star. Like, I remember when Green Goblin issue #1 dropped, and we were all excited about that, and for the life of me I couldn't figure out why, but we just were, because now a new villain, a new take on the character. Does this mean we're going to get a new trading card of it? We got to keep our eyes out for that. And then, of course, the obsession with holograms everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that
And
was
whether it was
cool
like
being. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
whether it was one you could see the 3D of the hologram from straight on,
Mm-hmm.
or you kind of had to do the three angle thing from left to middle to right to see it move the character, like in a pose where he's like, maybe maybe the character, it's like Hulk smashing a brick or something, and he's doing that motion from left to right, so you'd get that in the hologram. um but what the other thing that's cool, so you had the two things you'd see most kids our age were getting was either the superhero cards or sports, whether it be baseball was probably #1, right? And then maybe second basketball. You got to think
Mm-hmm.
this was the height of like Jordan on the Bulls, right? Everybody was getting
Right.
those cards. And then I'd say maybe third was like like hockey and other sports. But right in the middle then, the specialty cards were kind of always going strong. I think even in the 70s they had them, right? Where they would have for the TV shows and the movies was this kind of weird in between that it seems like everybody had a few of those, right? Whether it was like you're a superhero card collector, but you have like a deck of like some Batman cards or some horror related cards, or you're a sports card collector and you have some like Star Wars cards or Dukes of Hazzard, or
Mm-hmm.
there was so many in between. And that's that kind of gray area where it's almost hard to even, you know, I'm always fascinated by like vending machine toys. I'm always telling you, Zombie, that I love that kind of stuff because it's almost like hard to trace at all. When you get into that cheaper market of like what came out of a gumball machine toys, that's how I feel about kind of some of these movie and TV show cards. Some are kind of just it's hard to see where it starts and where it ends, right? Because there's so many that didn't sell that well, or something was popular 1 minute, like take Alf or something, right? Like that show was hot and then it was not, right? Things
Mm-hmm.
like just were hot and then they fell off. And the same with these movies, like look at like Dick Tracy, right? That movie was hot as shit that 1 year. Um After that, you couldn't even move some of those toys or cards. So they had so much excessive merch that they would release a trading card for like a movie that was relatively popular, but then it wasn't the next day. So it was very like flash in the pan kind of IPs that they were doing, for a lot of this stuff.
Well, it
Did
was
you
easy,
see?
easy
Oh, go ahead.
marketing, or for product placement for stuff
Right.
for cash grabs.
Mm-hmm. My question was going to be, Vince, did you often see trends rise and fall like that with your dad and the whole comic book experience?
You would have people that would get hyped up about it, and then so like that was the thing is like when we knew a movie was going to be coming out or something that was going to be a frenzy for the public, we would try to order enough merchandise to meet the demand. because that's going to be like a quick cash grab, right? So whenever the Super Mario Brothers movie came out, even though as the kids we enjoyed that film, but it wasn't as great as it could have been. Like the toys did pretty well for at least a couple months. So we went and grabbed like a set of them. We went to different four different Toys R Us's, and that's what you would do. You would go around because like sometimes you couldn't order product from Preview or Diamond. I don't remember if I don't remember if Preview is part of Diamond anymore. I don't remember because there was originally two companies distributors that you could go through to order product, and you would basically when a preview would come out, you would have 6 to 8 months ahead window of what was going to be coming out. So you would order ahead of time. So at that time you would get stuff. And that's how we would work for cards and comics and just about anything. But you would just see these trends that happen. Like, and just to make a joke, because my dad and his buddy Jason, when he was working at All Star Comics back like when I was 15, there was two kids in there and they were looking at all these cards, hovering over a Michael Jordan card, right? And so they both Jason and my dad looked at each other and you go, it's pretty sad. The tragic story about what happened to Michael, right? You know, he heard about the car crash he was in, and these two kids were like looking at each other and they took off and they were laughing because it was like you could just kind of manipulate the consumer to go in and sell stuff to you that you needed in the shop sometimes. Um, but yeah, you could definitely see the trends, and it's always usually around some major event like the death of Superman, Spider-Man getting married, like or a movie property. You know, you're gonna have this like Batman 89. Of course, people that may have known about Batman but didn't read the comic, they may be interested now. So they would come in looking for issues or they would be looking for the toys. And so it's kind of that whole thing. It just depends on what's going on in the real world that's going to increase interest in the brand and the icon to make people want to spend money into it. So
Did you guys ever feel like maybe that's why there was such a push for trading cards back when we were growing up? Because when I look at it now, you can definitely see that uh, sports collectibles and trading cards are usually uh, by adults now. Maybe they had them as kids and now they can afford the more expensive stuff as adults, but you definitely see how a lot of card companies and lines have either completely vanished or have just died down by comparison to now. Um, they're either dominated by sports cards or by playing card games. So,
mhm.
did you guys ever feel as, collectors and such that there was just too much of a push for the trading card scene? Do you feel like maybe we could have used a little bit more? And what are your thoughts on collecting like those X-Men cards versus saying collecting cards from movie series like Jaws and Batman and all of those? Because again, we're going backwards and forwards with card quality. Movie cards tended to be on that very old card stock. Sometimes they even had that piece of gum in them.
Mhm.
Um, so did you guys ever feel that collecting for those was one and the same, or were they different? Do you feel that maybe movie card lines could have been better? Maybe they were. Like, what are your thoughts on on collecting those kinds of things?
Ryan, you want to go
I mean,
first?
so I would. Well, for me, I there was almost too many options of which ones to collect. You're almost like kind of overwhelmed. You walk in a card store, right, and you just see the glass counters just filled to the brim. So like on the one hand, you're going through, you kind of like looking at like what speaks to me. So you're gonna go to like what other if there's like a movie trading card, you're gonna go to whatever ones resonate the most with you. So it's like for me, it would have been like, Batman or Dick Tracy or Gremlins. Those all actually had cards. Ninja Turtles had cards for the first two movies, probably the third one too. Um, but like it's kind of like you'd want a little bit of everything, right? You'd like as a kid, like for me, I would pick out a comic or two, maybe get some trading cards. The third one, and not to get us off topic, but the third one I was always looking for was like the anime VHS,
Mhm.
which were always kind of pricey. So I'd usually be priced out of those anyway. But so you'd kind of just you'd hit up your store for whatever speaks to you. You kind of get like a hodgepodge bundle of a little bit of everything, maybe a comic book trading pack, and it's so easy to. We have to remember also once you're at the cash register to throw in a pack because it's sitting right there, right? They're smart. It's like candy.
Yep.
They got it all right there, and the box is open. So you just, oh, let me just grab that pack, throw that in, you know.
Hmm.
But then you end up with that, and before you know it, oh, now you're hooked. Now you got to complete this series. So it's so easy to kind of fall into the trading card market because of that and the placement by the register. Um, so there's that. I mean, what do you think, Vince?
So it was definitely unique per store because you wouldn't always see one trading card set at another comic book shop or at your local grocery store or wherever you were buying your cards at the time. Because I remember like I never saw I think the Batman. No, there was one trading card set that I never saw until I went to this particular comic book shop because you have limited retail space when you have your shop, you have your comics, your not so much collectibles. I mean, there was a few, but not as much. Not till later. Um, sometimes each store catered to the clientele that would come in. So you may not even see X-Men cards. You're going to see more baseball because the shop may be dedicated to the whole baseball or sports collectibles. And then they kind of got into the comic side of it. Um, but like I always loved like that just going to a store or a comic book shop and finding those things. It was like for me, like the magazines, like the gaming magazines or the anime magazines that you would get, or Cinephistique, or the stuff that my dad would pick up, Fangoria,
Yeah.
um, and this definitely is a topic on magazines we could do at another time, but um, it's it's funny because like I always wondered, like, because I grew up in a comic book shop. I grew up around the whole collectible thing. And I just wondered how like other people got into that stuff because some of those cards or things weren't at every location. Like you couldn't find some of these things at Toys R Us. They didn't exist over there. It was mainly toys.
Hmm.
But you might be able to find it at KB or you might be able to find it at your video rental place. But like usually I was the one that was the gateway in for my friends. Like I would go, "Hey, check this out. This is awesome. I want to go spend my money on this. Hey mom, can you take me over here?" Um versus being the one that was kind of like had it brought to me because of, I just stumbled upon it. I kind of was held my hands was held going through this whole thing by my dad. Um but it's always unique just seeing the trends of things that people enjoyed or what they collected because everything people did was different and
Hmm.
it was fun because not everybody knew everything and it was so awesome to be able to like to find something or see something somebody had and be like I didn't even know this existed, my mind is blown, versus like now today it's like everybody knows everything and it's like we're all jaded and we don't have that magic anymore and it sucks. I miss collecting cards. I miss the whole comic book experience. Everything's digital now, but
Hmm.
I don't know if that answers enough of your question or not, or I went off on a complete
No,
sidetrack.
it does draw attention to that unique perspective that you have because um unlike most of us who didn't have that luxury, it's really cool to hear things from the other side of it.
Mhm.
And whereas it might have been commonplace for you, for us it would have been like, man, I would have killed to have that experience, to be able to just open up a pack because I know that my dad owns the shop kind of thing.
Where I was
um
helping him collect something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really cool to get that perspective on that. Did you ever, because you mentioned, kind of talking about this with other kids and your friends, did you ever find yourself kind of like advertising your dad's store, or did you not really have to because everybody knew that your dad owned a place?
Well, so that's the funny thing is like my friends knew because like they were, went to school with them, but it's hard when the shop versus where I go to school are like completely maybe 25 miles away.
Mm,
So it's like I can advertise it, but I don't know if their parents would go and say, "Hey, go take us over here." But like I think when he was working at All Star Comics as a manager there, in Clear Lake, that was a little bit more easier because it was a little bit closer because of where I was going to school. And yeah, of course, I wanted to advertise. I was like, "Hey, this is this, or blah blah blah. If you like this, you can go over here. My dad's got it." And it was always just fun to be able to hang out in those shops and just
To go
talk
back
about
to
nerd culture.
yeah, for
to
sure.
go back to what you said about the print quality zombie, I think this was really part of the mass appeal by like mid early to mid 90s of the comic boom and trading card boom because the art did get so good. Like when I would okay, a lot of people will look down on and I kind of cringe at them when they do about the 90s comics because there was so much being made and so they're worthless. Like, I'm gonna say his name because he's a channel that does it, but Pat the NES Punk talks about comics like that from the 90s. I don't care what they're worth because they meant something to me. And I loved the switch from print paper to gloss comics. And you could just, dude, when you would look at what Image was putting out, we joke about Liefeld and like some of his drawing skills, but
Yes,
like
yes,
but you look at like Spawn and it would pop off the page, the colors, dude. Oh my god. And
Hmm.
just the gloss pages, if that is not an upgrade to most people's mind, the art and the paper that was being printed on, from going to just a step above like your Sunday newspaper quality. I mean, this was a big difference. And I mean, and when it comes to all those comics that Image was putting out, not just Spawn, like even like Gen 13, that art would just pop off the page. Jim Lee with Wildcats, when
yep.
they did the revamped X-Men run, those characters, oh my god, the gloss, the just beautiful artwork. I cannot stress enough, and I really think that helps elevate the medium. It wasn't just on because okay, when I'm going through my vintage stuff that's worth more, right? The Uncanny X-Men stuff. Okay, the print quality varies page to page. You will get a page of the printing that is I've talked to your dad about this too when we've done these talks, Vince,
Yeah.
and you'll get the shadowing unintentionally. So it'll look like almost like a double print occurred where they printed the page, but it like moved a bit or something. So you have like this almost like a double image. Just goes to just I'm trying to say kind of bad print quality, right? But then the next page is perfect. There's a uniformity to you do not see that by the time Image Comics and stuff on this gloss paper, it was extremely consistent at this point. The quality of like graphic novel quality when you're flipping through just a basic issue now. And with the card stock too, I can bring it right back to that too, that the cards we were collecting, the print quality had improved so much to these images that it was like you were flipping through art, you know, it was that level. And I think that led to why it was so popular. And if baseball enough, even for the sports cards, if they didn't look that good, they wouldn't have been as hot. They wouldn't have been selling like they were. Is if the cards had stayed looking like they did in the 70s and 80s, and if the comics had stayed looking like they did in the 70s and 80s, because it was just not at that level.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the perspective of what comics represented changed. It was still at a period of time still a for children. It wasn't
Hmm.
looked upon as something that was viable. It wasn't video games still have this stigmata to them.
Right.
That there is no like it doesn't have any real value to a real book or it's still frowned upon. No matter how much pop culture has grown, and it just seems like everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon with what's cool and hot, which is kind of the downfall of comics at a period of time in the 90s because of the speculation side of it. And comic companies were like, oh, well, there's people wanting to buy this. Well, let's have like 17 variants for this X-Men issue, right?
Yeah.
And it got crazy from like 93 to like 2000 was really bad, and it almost crashed Marvel.
Even Power of the Force 2 got too greedy, Vince,
Oh yeah.
because they had to have so many variants of that toy line for Kenner Power of the Force 2 that you were getting so many different versions. And then they switched from the hologram card stock to you get a cell from the movie on the card stock too. You'd get a little, the little
Lithograph.
coin. Then they
Yeah, the
went to the
little coin.
coins, and then they
And in
so
the
many
image,
gimmicks.
the cell image that was from a scene in the film that
Yeah,
represents
and
this
you hold it
character.
up to the light like
Yeah.
you're looking at
Yeah.
a slideshow. Yeah, they got really gimmicky, and they just put out too much stuff, and
So
people can't keep up with it.
there was a really cool moment, and I want to bring this up specifically because we're talking about cards. Um, and that is the birth of trading card games. And like
Yeah.
I remember us getting like the first box of the Magic the Gathering, I think it was the beta box, and picking up two of those, reading the cards, reading the instruction. It was so easy to play. Like it was like all the information you needed was just within the cards. You didn't need to have anything extra. And it was such a cool concept. And then after that, it just boomed. Like you had Pokemon, you had Dragon Ball Z, you had Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, there you name it. There's a card game for it. Star Wars had originally a card game system that I think I don't remember who did it or not. I don't know if it was TSR or not. But
Oh, you're talking about the black and gray
yes.
packs?
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember that.
and that one was really complicated where we tried to play
Yes.
that. But this was something cool where it's like you take the love of these cards that you just traded with your friends. They didn't have any kind of like extra play value other than just showcasing that you have a collection. You could play with them. You could be these superheroes or these fictional characters that you enjoy. And it took card collecting to a whole new level. That like just picking up that first Magic the Gathering pack or the box was took it to the whole new level. And I know that Ryan, you talked about this. You didn't really play Magic at all. But I know Zombie did. And
Just
Mhm.
too many things I was spending money on, other things. I thought they looked cool. Dude. You're just only so much disposable income to go around. And I mean, you're at this point when we're in our early teens, we're using our allowance money,
true.
or we're like mowing lawns, and it's
Mhm.
limited funds. So all mine was going to toys and comics, and the superhero cars. I didn't have any left for Magic.
Yeah.
AKA Ryan's too cool for Magic the Gathering.
Oh, not necessarily, not necessarily.
I don't know, man. With him being a fan of Iron Sword and stuff, and He-Man, like the Magic the
Right?
Gathering is like right there.
That
The
should be right up your
the
alley.
medieval should go right up my, yeah, exactly. It
Hell, you
should.
should be playing D&D with us.
If only
Yeah.
my wallet had a few more dollars in it, I may have.
Do you guys think that the move to trading card games was a move based on the fact that either trading card collecting as a whole was dying, or do you feel like they just wanted to take it in a whole new direction? Because I agree. I feel like the trading card game aspect allowed us to do more than just, oh, look, I have a binder filled with all these cards that I can't really do anything with. But now I can because there's this new card game. Granted, we still have to bust out, hundreds of dollars just to make something, winnable with, because Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially and Pokemon are viciously known for that. You have to throw down some serious cash if you want to be able to win, run the tourney sing. It just keeps going up from there, just keeps escalating. But looking at collecting normal trading cards, whether they're Marvel, movies, DC, what have you, and then going the step in this direction towards trading card games. Again, do you feel like that was a move out of desperation, or do you think it's more of like, hey, we actually have something to give with this? What do you
Well,
think the thought process is on that?
because I mean, what? Man, I'm gonna like completely destroy my credit here. I know that Wizards of the Coast owns Magic now, but I'm trying to
Mhm.
remember who was the original parent company of that. But like I know that they wanted to create a card game because they already made other games. So
Right.
it was something natural like to the progression of. Um but I would say more now it is a money grab. You've already got these people hooked into it. And something we haven't talked about is the fact of like how trading cards and trading card games are loot boxes.
Yes.
We've frowned upon on a video game scene, but man, if it's a card thing, maybe it's a physical thing, but still we even had like Loot Crate and a couple other like loot box things that you could purchase that were physical stuff.
Now I'm remembering too why I wasn't playing some of these card games because my card game was Pogs. I was deep. I was, let's just say, deep into Pogs at this point. I mean, I even had you have like the PVC like pipe you put them all in. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like a stem from a bong.
Yep, I
I
still
had them
got mine.
all in one of those. It's like one of those that you like. It looks like a big lightsaber. Like you can throw 200 of them in there and just go.
Got your
You know what I mean? I
slammers.
had that many Pogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a pod collector, but that was because I was playing D&D or Magic the
Yeah,
Gathering or other things that I was like, this has more substance than let me take this
right.
metal round bottle cap and throw it at a paper cardboard bottle caps. And I understood. I played it. I did have friends who enjoyed it and I played it with them, but I
It
really
was
want
definitely a half and half. Like
yeah.
half the people that collected the Pogs you didn't even really play that. You just collected them.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it went into that thing because they had them for every movie and every show, Pogs for it.
Yep.
Um, I remember like I had a little coffin case that I put all my slammers in. And yeah, you would have because those were kind of a piece of art in themselves. Because like you'd have ones that were bronze or like stainless steel,
Oh
or they would
yeah.
have like rubber on them for some bounce, or they would have a hologram on them. Remember like the OJ and the Slammer, the OJ Slammer, like the juice machine. Sounds like a double, like saying the same thing twice, but yeah, there was a OJ Slammer.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, those were some of those slammers were really cool. You had like all the classic stereotypical 90s things that they would put on them like yin yangs and skulls and the poison ones.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
it those did get really addictive to collect for too. And we can't we we can't by any means like discount the extent of the popularity of that too. It was rampant hog fever at least for a year or two. I wish we could put a year on that. What year do we think was the height of Pogs?
I mean, considering Pogs was a thing from the 70s that got reintroduced in the 90s, I don't know. I don't remember when that
But
came.
then let's even be fair to that. In the 70s, it was nowhere near the
Oh, the
resurgence it
popularity?
had.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. No, you're 100% right on that.
I would
and even
imagine that it was about the mid 90s, probably like
yeah,
95, 96, because
right.
I was still in grade school when, after X-Men cards, Pogs were the next thing. Somewhere
They
between
were.
there was yo-yos as well. And again, folks, all the things that I'm talking about right now got banned from my school. So
Yeah.
that's how
Man,
I
your school
remember
was
that.
strict, Zombie. Your
Yeah.
school was strict. Okay, my school was only banning like shirts that said like Big Johnson on it. You know those Big Johnson shirts? They would
Uh-huh.
ban anything like super sexual. But like Pogs, I don't remember them banning that. No trading cards.
Oh,
Maybe some of the extreme wrestling shirts, like if they had like something on there, like saying "suck it" or something, maybe they wouldn't allow
right.
that. But
I
Offensive
had a
stuff.
couple alien shirts that I had to turn inside out because they had either a tail bursting out the back or a three-headed alien on the front that someone thought was a Cerberus from the devil. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is an alien, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Be cultured. Anyway, yeah.
Yep. I had to do that too with some of my wrestling shirts. But yeah, the pod craze, like the trading card craze and the trading card game craze, you had many companies crossing all those boundaries. And that's why I mentioned, do you guys feel like these steps that these properties were taking, like put Marvel on a trading card, put Marvel on a Pog now, do you feel like it was just another attempt to cash in on the fandom, or do you feel like maybe somebody thought this was a great step forward? Because we're still seeing that rising trend of collection addiction, whether you're a hardcore
Mhm.
collector or
yeah,
not. We used to throw all of our loose change together and buy small packets of Pogs at our local 7-Eleven because the guy who owned them, he had a gumball container that he completely emptied out and put random packs of Pogs in there, and we'd get them for like a quarter or for $1 or something. Um, and for you non-extreme nerds listening, there is a difference between Pog brand Pogs and milk caps. I'm just gonna say that because I got to
Yes,
get that
yeah,
yeah.
out there.
yeah.
Did the
The
milk
collector
cap?
in me is killing me.
Those had that thing in the middle that you could push down.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's what the milk caps were different.
But they still had the same intricate art on them. You know, a lot of us who
Yeah.
grew up playing the game, and this is also why they got banned from our schools, is because we were gambling with them. You know, you
Yeah.
put your stack together, which is why we hated poisons, because if y'all remember, poisons won you the hand if you flipped it. And just like the cards, we would come to school with like stacks of these things. I rarely saw Pog pages, but I know they existed where you could just slide them in like a trading card and they were specifically cut for that.
Yeah, I remember seeing
Um,
those.
I'll tell you something that's surprising as a commercials of the 80s and 90s archivist. I got to tell you, there's not a lot of commercials I've seen for Pogs, which is something that's kind of interesting. It's more that thing that just it was for sale in the comic book stores, but it didn't really get advertised that much like in a video. It's not like because I mean we think about toys. You look at like Motu and Turtles. You had a commercial for every one of those figures. They were in one or the other. And there was just not when I've looked, I'm not seeing many Pogs in commercials. It's almost like one of these conundrums where it's like almost like you wonder, like, did this really exist? Was this really that
Mandela.
popular? Because it was such a big phenomenon. But you look back and you're like, well, where was the I'm sure there was print ads, but as far as commercials, I just haven't seen it, man. And I've
You're
looked.
gonna you're gonna find commercials for Pog brand Pog products.
Yes, I
That's
can.
what you'll find. That's what you'll find. And it's that
Okay.
little guy that looks like Captain Caveman, and he
Yes.
kind of jumps in and he's like Pog, whatever. So you'll see that. But it just goes to show you that just like trading cards, word of mouth was so strong with these things that
Yeah.
you didn't need a
Yep.
commercial.
Yep.
No, yeah, that's the thing, like for any kind of sale, as long as you help a customer out and you build that rapport, they're going to tell like 5 to 10 other people about your business to come to you specifically because you help them out. And word of
Hmm.
mouth is the biggest selling thing. Or the thing that they try to teach you when you sell is like just word of mouth. And because no matter how much you advertise it and how much money goes into it, if you don't have that real life experience or the word of somebody else who experienced it telling that other person to come to the store. Yeah. I mean,
You know
it's
which one I really want to make sure we don't miss because we're getting kind of past that time. Garbage Pail Kids, because it really captured that gross out humor, with those.
mhm.
And once we're in Pogs, we're kind of past that phenomenon of those cards, you know,
Cards and
because those
stickers.
have
Oh
a
yeah,
rabid
the
fan
sticker
base.
cards with the sticker books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they had the regular cards too, right? They weren't just the sticker ones.
Yeah,
No,
the
but
stickers were kind of like a secondary thing, like a
yeah,
kind of like a prize.
because you used to buy those little bitty packets with like 15 stickers, and you'd have the book, and then you'd fill it out. Because I remember having one for Turtles, the the Centurions, and then like
Nice.
I think I had the one for Mario Brothers also, which
You.
Lois showed us some of hers before that she has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that collection was pretty insane.
Hmm.
It's cool to see that kind of thing, preserved. Um, in line of talking about things that we haven't really covered yet, even though we're still, going on about it. How did you all feel about the card packs with the gum?
With that
The gum was always
the wax
gross.
paper. You know,
I feel like the gum was always gross, even when they were new. The gum was always bad.
yeah, it wasn't great because you like it would dry out your mouth
Why would it like disintegrate on your tongue? What the is this gum made out of?
because they would
It's
dry
like
it.
a
It
powder
was
gum.
freeze dried or whatever. Oh, no, it wasn't freeze dried, but it was like
Terrible.
there was
Dehydrated,
all the
maybe?
moisture, yeah, dehydrated. All the moisture was taken out. So like when you put it in your mouth, it like made your mouth dry, just so
So let me
you
ask
could
you
try to
this:
chew
why
it.
wouldn't they have? Okay,
Cut
take
your
like
cheek.
A Wrigley's gum. You know how every Wrigley's gum has the little foil? Why wouldn't they
Right.
have just stuck one like that in there with the foil on it? And then
Well,
it would have preserved it a little bit.
because of the shelf life, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You have cards that may sit on a shelf because in hindsight, like gum has a expiration date. So
Yeah.
eventually, you're going to have a box of Ninja Turtle cards that may be there for 6 months. They wanted to have something that would have lasted for that period of time that this product would be on the shelf. So,
Or
um,
sometimes they'll give you the sticker or the fake tattoo instead of the gum.
yep, yep,
Sometimes
like
they'll put
the
that in the
Cracker
pack.
Jack boxes.
Yep.
But like, there's also the evolution of the collecting card type thing with Hero Clicks, and you had, I think, Dragon Dice was another one that where you would
Yeah.
buy packs of different dice that represented certain heroes and monsters and stuff. Um, there was a lot of those like alternative games that came out at that time that you were either in the know about or you weren't. Because even Marvel had a card game too. They were themed per superhero or the team.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what they're called. We used to collect that too.
You know what's funny too? Our generation, as we're in our 40s here, we grew up with cards though. We were really babying these cards because remember, like the baby boomer generation, they were like rubber banding like their baseball cards to like a bicycle wheel. Remember that shit? Like they would just beat on their card. Like they would beat the crap out of that stuff. They would fold their comics up in a like they're gonna hit somebody with it. They would just there really wasn't so much of a collecting, and maybe that's why those are worth so much, right? Because our parents' generation would just beat on their shit, beat on
Well,
their cards and comics,
here's a different perspective on that. So, what did we do with our NES games? We threw away the boxes and just kept
rip
the
them up.
carts.
Yeah,
We did that for most of our games because it was like the game cart was the thing we wanted. It wasn't until like really kind of maybe the PlayStation era where it was like you don't want your disc scratched that people, not everyone, but like the
yeah.
general public was like, okay, well, I need to, because I'm so used to compact discs being in a case, so I'm going to make sure to take care of this so my game isn't scratched and I can't play it if it's scratched.
Because the classic storage for our parents' generation of their cards was what? A shoebox,
Yes.
right? They would just throw all those fucking cards in a shoebox, and they
Cigar
would all have
box.
dinged corners and have like the sides worn off. They would really beat on that shit. It's almost like they thought of it more like as disposable stuff than a collection.
Hmm.
Well,
You
yeah, because
know,
it was again the child's toy. It
Yeah.
was, you did it when you were a kid, but then as you got older, you got rid of childish things, so says that Bible quote. Um, but I can tell you for certainty that a lot of the adults in my family definitely felt that way about a majority of their stuff. I have one uncle who was into the comic book collecting with me at the time, who managed to preserve a lot of his original releases, and he actually gave those to me.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe majority of people at the time just weren't thinking these were going to be a viable source of income later, because again, it was the kids thing to do at the time. But some of us were fortunate enough to kind of preserve our things, and maybe that also has something more to do not just with the generation, but also just the way that we were raised, the way that we were, brought
yeah, to
up
take
right.
care of your stuff better or not.
Yeah. That's
Because I can honestly say, coming from a lower middle class family, I may have gotten a video game 2 or 3 times a year, but we learned to appreciate what we got, because it
Yeah.
took some serious hours in cash just to get what was probably the equivalent of a $50-$60 game. So we kept everything, and that's why I'm fortunate I didn't throw away my boxes or the manuals.
You know
Um,
what I'm thinking too? Like, there's so much of the iconic status of athletes and superheroes associated back to these cards because take the rookie cards for athletes, right? That hypes them up so much because by the time they're a star or an MVP, you want that rookie card, which also adds to their status as a player. I believe that the status of these athletes and even superheroes, the cool factor they have is so much directly related back to the card because
mhm.
it's like the cool cards are directly related to who's the coolest superheroes, who are the coolest athletes, right? And in the 90s, what was it? It was Ken Griffey for baseball. It was Frank Thomas. It was for basketball. It was Jordan and Pippen. You know what I mean? It was anybody on the dream team, right? Those guys all had the elevated status, being the dream team in the Olympics, and all their cards were that's the cards you wanted in the pack. And because of those cards being in demand, everything else kind of went along with that. You wanted their shoes, you wanted this or that, you wanted to, your superhero to be in a movie they were going to make. That's a lot of which started to be made in the 2000s. But at that time, you wanted to watch the cartoon associated with that trading card. So it's all complementary of each other.
It is. And it's something to bring back to what Zombie was saying too, is that we were talking about how like cards changed anyway from, being on that like card stock to the more glossy card stock. And a lot of
Yeah.
it had to do with the fact that like as the collector changed, and certain things like had more relevance or staying power, and the popularity increased for this stuff, of course they wanted to have more higher quality product for the consumer. So you could definitely tell the trend changing from, these cards that are wrapped in this foil wax paper pack with gum to realizing that the gum is actually going to release a product on the cards and actually make the cards, degrade. I can't even say it at the moment. Um, and so you changed how you release these products. So it was a one way in one hand to make it to where, hey, this is a higher end product. We're thinking of the consumer versus also, hey, we're doing this because we know you're gonna want it. Like, hey, it's flashier. It's in a nice special packaging. It's kind of think of like
Mhm.
Willy Wonka with the golden ticket in this chocolate bar.
Yeah.
And the other thing we cannot forget to say, that's it's the real jump in the shark moment on trading cards, is the fallacy that these we're going to put your kids through college, these cards, what these cards are worth. Maybe not the superhero ones, but remember how much faith they put, just like the stupid Beanie Babies would later on. People put so much faith into these baseball cards are worth a fortune,
Mhm.
right? We cannot overlook that turning point where they just they didn't end up being, because everybody had them. It was so popular, so they couldn't be worth that long term. But we all remember that, how much those cards got priced up at the height in the card shops and the comic stores. Oh my God.
That's the speculator market, man. That's
Yeah.
Right?
And it's
it,
such a bummer because sports cards really took a hit
Yeah.
compared to comics,
You go to a
trading
convention, they're
cards.
giving them away boxes,
Yeah.
Jesse, of the sports cards, the new old stock. They can't move them. A lot of those
Mm-mm.
ones,
And they still
they
have the
can't move them.
original they have the original wrapper on them. You can tell they've been sitting there
Everything.
because they're covered in dust. Um,
Yeah.
Sports cards have only been sustained by older generations who probably had them, who probably has that
Yeah.
Babe Ruth rookie card somewhere, like it's even more specific than say comic books and trading card game cards are. Like you can go through Magic the Gathering's catalog, find a certain card that is worth money in minutes because it's either a very old card or it's a card that's not allowed in the tournaments anymore. And the same
Yeah.
can be for any other trading card game, but for sports cards, you have to be very, very specific. You have to have the right edition. You have to have the right variant. You have to have this certain amount of damage on it. Like it's so particular that I can totally see why it took the hit that it did.
Yeah.
And I had friends who were highly into sports cards that had those. They had the Jordan rookie card, the Pippen rookie card, all these different players. Um, and I almost shudder to think what happened to that. Like, was the investment worth it?
well, and you think about what's going on right now with current card collecting, with people running to McDonald's and buying all the Pokemon cards before the kids can get them in their Happy Meals
Ugh,
because
Yeah.
yeah.
they want to make their set, they want to put it on YouTube and show them opening it, and then they want to sell it. And the same
Be,
thing like
be right back, guys.
okay, during COVID, you had the Target and Walmart having to put their cards from their collectible area to the customer service because people were going in and either like just buying so much so they can get those expensive cards out of the either the Pokemon or Magic or sports cards and then flipping them and then not
Mm-hmm.
leaving enough for the consumer to buy, which was of
Yeah.
course increasing the price of the product.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, collecting has taken that sort of cutthroat route where, back then when we were kids, like, yeah, we might have had a hard time finding packs here and there, but like you mentioned, there were generalized series and then there were the more specific ones that maybe you had to go to a specialty store to
Mhm.
find. Nowadays, you can't even find the most basic of trading card series because they're either completely bought out by the time you get there, being scalped, um, and yeah, even for just like it's hard to be even just the most basic of collector, which is very unfortunate. You can't just go and buy a pack when you see them. You literally have to hunt them down. It's so sad that collecting for, cards, comics, not so much. I don't really see that. Video games, retro video games, like there's sort of a bloodthirsty approach to it.
Hmm.
Whereas before, the struggle was just saving up the money to get them.
Well, the problems now are is there's so many people into everything. It used to be nice, it was you and your friends that were the ones that are into this stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're nerds," but it's okay. I don't care.
Right.
It's more chance for me to find what I'm looking for than the jock that picked on me that now is into it because it's cool, but it wasn't
Hmm.
cool because it wouldn't be favorable for him to actually like this stuff because maybe his team would pick on him or the hot girl he wants to go out with wouldn't want to go with him because he's collecting toys and card games or whatever. But the other aspect of this is that it doesn't help with the companies because, with Magic the Gathering, you got your standard set, you got your collector set version, which is
Hmm.
has the more holographic versions of the cards. Um, so like, you can go buy a box for 50 or $100, or you can buy the collector's one that's 250 or $300. And you're not even guaranteed to be able to get every card in that set. So it makes it hard for even just the standard collector to be able to get anything they want.
Hmm.
Because if you don't have the money, you're being priced out of the whole collecting process, or they make it to where some of the stuff is exclusive to conventions and not available for the public at all. And that's a whole other topic. I'm still mad I haven't got my once was a man Cobra Commander. Um, but uh there's a lot of factors that go into this stuff, and that's why like Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are doing so badly with Magic because they're making it hard for the average consumer to be able to get the cards they want without having to break the bank or taking out a loan or putting it on a credit card to get what they want. Um,
Mhm.
at least with Pokemon, I can go buy a box and have a potential of getting almost every card I want, and then piecemeal it out somewhere other way to do it. I don't have to go buy the standard box and the collector edition box to be able to hope that I'm going to get a full set.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you were saying, the joy that used to be there with opening up a pack and just wondering, what the anticipation that comes with opening that pack and trying to figure out, are you going to get anything good? Are you just grateful to be able to open that pack, to even have one? Um, all those little things that made the nostalgia and the experience of collecting is kind of gone, because by the time you find what you're looking for, a little bit of that enjoyment's gone,
Hmm.
because you've had to do so much just to be able to find something that few years ago you would never had to really fight about, or make contacts with whoever does the NECA shelf at Target.
Yep, you got to go get the rep from NECA who brings in the toys because they don't even like sell the toys anymore through normal ordering means. It's got to be brought in, and they pay Target to have a shelf space or Walmart to have a shelf space. But I think the joy though is been for me is getting to introduce this stuff to my son. Like, I know whenever Darkness Ablaze came out, we picked up a couple boxes and then we ended up picking up some of the stuff and we worked our way to trying to complete a set. And he was all into it. He was watching the show and with me and my wife, and it's like the joy of what I used to do with my dad is now being passed on to my son. But it becomes hard when like you can't afford it anymore, because everything's too overly priced. Or scalpers come in and what would be maybe 70 to $100 for a box of Pokemon cards is now 150, maybe 250. And it's like, well, why should I even do this when I can just go buy the games and we can play that way?
Hmm.
That whole completely digital aspect of it.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen how some of the popular card games have done that, have taken that digital route, and
Hmm.
I'm a little intrigued by that. I'm curious to see how some of those work. Like I was big into the Yu-Gi-Oh scene and just dialed it back because um, one of the things that we kind of touched upon, but we didn't really go in depth into, was the pacing of collecting. You know,
Yes.
trying to get everything as fast as you can. You know, state of urgency because something new was going to come out, or you had to get the first edition of something. Um, pretty common pretty common occurrences with trading cards and comics and trading card games. And that's kind of what exhausted me. Even when I had disposable income, it just was too much. I couldn't invest in a series for only a couple of months knowing that a newer series was going to come out that may have better or worse things than what I've already dropped serious cash for. I fell out of it because of that. But when the jump to playing these card games online became a thing, and the digital side of things, I was curious to see how that works, but at the same time I feel like it's still not the same. You know, there's something about like holding that comic and thumbing through the pages. There's something about holding those cards or
Yes.
flipping through them in your binder, whether you're looking at them because they're your childhood collection, or like you mentioned, you want to teach your children about this and why this was a big part of your life. Um, there's something to that you just don't get with the digital stuff. And there's also just that part of it that's missing nowadays because collecting has become such a financial thing.
Well, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help with the fact that like there's the FOMO. There's also the whole thing of like you're hyped for something. You know, back in the day, you could be hyped for something and you would be content being able to maybe pick a couple packs here and there, maybe pick up a box or whatever. But you never knew or had to fear that you wouldn't be able to complete this, or you wouldn't be able to like go to a shop and it would be completely sold out because everybody else is trying to do it. Um, it it changes the whole aspect of collecting when, or just anything. Like that's my thing too with toys. It's like there's stuff I want, but either I just can't afford it, or there's when I go to the store, there was 20 other collectors that went and grabbed everything off the shelf, not allowing anything to be there for anybody else to find, or maybe the kid that wants to buy it. And they're like, oh, they're on their Facebook groups going, hey, I found like 20 of these TMNT 4-pack punk turtles from the NECA stuff. Do you all want one? And then, there's none left for the person that wants to go out and hunt for it themselves. Or, maybe they work a weird shift at work and then they get off work and they're going to get groceries, and the chances of them happen to stumble upon what they're looking for is diminished now because of the fact that other people took the fun away from the hunt or whatever.
Hmm. Do you feel like because of that, it motivates you as a collector to either go back to retro collecting or collecting the newer products that come about? Do you find like, because we all have a yearn for the past, um but also, we like a lot of the newer release stuff that comes out as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like uh you have a constant tug of war between those decisions, or do you feel like it's very simple for you to just decide what you want to throw your money into and just, go from there?
If it's retro stuff, usually I'm the latter. I'm like, if I can find it, like, because there's always a way for me to play anything I want to. It's whether I want to put the time into, getting the right emulator or whatever, or purchasing it digitally, but if I can, or going the route of getting a reproduction. Um, but as far as like toys, I've always been the type of person that I want to have the best representation of the character that I'm purchasing that represents my nostalgia from the media that character's from. Like why I collect GI Joe classifieds. They look pretty damn close to like them coming off the screens from the Sumbo and the Deke cartoon series. Uh Same thing with Transformers. They've gotten better. The engineering's better. It's more accurate to what it was in the cartoon versus like the suspension of disbelief on how Optimus Prime transforms versus how he transforms in the cartoon, and he has gaps in his arm. I do have nostalgia for the toy, but I already have my original stuff for like some of my Transformers or my original Prime. Um, but I don't know. That's an interesting question.
What was the question?
I was asking if, considering, all of us here have a taste for nostalgia, but we also have a taste for newer releases, newer figurines, maybe even comics and cards if they decide to go back to that medium. My question was, do you find it to be a tug of war when it comes to deciding whether you're going to invest in something retro versus something newer released? Or when you know what's out there, is it easier for you to just decide what to invest in?
If I go modern, I usually go NECA.
Oh my NECA. Sorry.
And a lot of that is I wanted most of my collection to be what I remembered the figures to be then. Not so much like screen accuracy. Mine's more like the aesthetic memories of playing with the figures as they were then. But like there's where I like to fill in the gaps are ones that maybe figures we never got then, or figures that like the perfect one that really got me excited was when we first found out they're going to finally do the movie accurate Ninja Turtles for NECA. That's why I got most of the lines from the first two, most of the releases from that, and all the horror figures, like all the Friday the 13th NECA ones, the Nightmare on Elm Streets. There's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre one, the Halloween ones, because those were just ones I had always wanted. And even the movie Maniacs that McFarlane did, like I felt like they still fell a little bit short, at least with the packaging, because they were in that kind of slice your hand open,
Yeah,
clear
clamshell
packaging,
plastic.
bubble
Yeah.
packs. So I'm kind of well, me and Vince talk about this all the time. He's more the modern guy, I'm more the vintage guy. Um, there's a weird, in the middle part though, because like I feel like when I get something like a Super 7 Ultimate, that's kind of in the middle. Because it's almost like kind of like an enlarged, more detailed, still similar to the make of the original Playmates, right? It's like a supersized version, more than it's a modern remaking, you know? So I'm always gonna lean more vintage because I'm rebuilding kind of like the museum of what I remember and having that, but I'm gonna add little bits and pieces here modern, whereas I think Vince is always gonna go more modern because he wants the more screen accuracy, and I get that. It's all what you're looking for,
Yeah.
And I think we have both have an appreciation for
Mhm.
both because you got to appreciate the history, or we would have never had these modern figures to begin with. There would be
Yeah.
no modern figures if we didn't have the vintage lines.
And it's
Those are the
yeah, if we
drawing
didn't
board.
have like what they did with some of the stuff for Toy Biz, we wouldn't have had Marvel Legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
transition from like, that even like the Energon Transformer stuff, like if we didn't have some of those the way they were designed, we wouldn't have some of the stuff, the engineering that made the figures better now. Like it's amazing that like you can get a Prime that is screen accurate, that looks like a real Peterbilt, that transforms into a Optimus Prime that looks screen accurate. Like there's nothing there compromised for the engineering of the transformation.
Sometimes it's more the scale size too for me.
Correct.
Like
Yep.
I really, because even the Hasbro wrestlers were in that around a 5-inch scale, maybe 4-inch. I really like that scaling. When they get too tall, they get a little awkward for me, like they're gonna topple over, or they're just compared. And then when I combine them with the vintage lines, the differences in scale are a little staggering. It's almost like they're towering over like statues. So that's why I kind of lean vintage a lot too, because vintage tends to be your smaller scale figures. Um,
Well, they
you know,
definitely
and it's like,
give you more room on your shelf. When you're dealing with more modern stuff, sometimes they can be in the 6-inch scale or taller, 7 inches with a Super 7. Even with NECA, you're looking at 7 inches. The Storm collectibles, they're more 12-inch size, and they can take up more space. Same thing with certain Transformers or other toy brands. But
well, back to cars. What do you think's the hottest one besides Pokemon right now? Like to take it to present day. Like what do the kids want these days? What cards?
Pretty much
well,
the ones we covered.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I would say Yu-Gi-Oh, but more Pokemon. Pokemon's probably going to be the card game people want to collect,
But
as
isn't
far as
that
kids.
amazing that there isn't really any new breaking ground? Because it's like we had all these different lines over time. Like we were just talking about it. Like it went from the superhero cards being big, then it turned into Pogs, then it turned into the trading card, the decks that were more like games. Then it was like, where is like the new? Is there anything that you think that kind of broke new ground? Any cards these days? I know for a while, sports cards got really horny about putting like pieces of their fucking uniform on the card, which I thought was kind of gimmicky.
Hmm.
Remember that? Like they'd be like, "Oh, we're gonna take some of the Yankees uniforms and put them on the fucking baseball cards." I'm like, okay, that's a little gimmicky.
Hmm.
I mean, is there anything else you've noticed that's really interesting?
Well, I mean, we've just talked about it a little bit, but we're moving into the point where things are going digital. So like you can go and not have to pay to play Magic or Pokemon. You just download the app and you can play against other people around the world.
And then they're full of microtransactions.
No, typically not. Like if you for Pokemon, what's really cool is that if you buy a Pokemon pack, you get a code that you can put and get a digital representation of what you just bought. And you can play that. So instead of having to go to your local store and play at a tournament for like what the I can't remember what the Pokemon thing was, where it was like every Friday you'd play at your local store and they would do tournaments and things, but you could just be able to play with your friend. Like you could literally like go, hey man, let's get on Zoom or whatever, and we'll sit face to face and through a camera and play Pokemon instead of having to
Hmm.
set up your camera so you can see your cards on your desk, all that stuff. So you know your friend's not cheating. Everything is housed within the game itself. So it's a little bit convenient. It makes it to where the accessibility to play this game that you love is easier than if you had it physically. But it's a different thing. It's not like video games right now. It's its own entity, but it's a cool feature.
I got like a time capsule question to throw to both of you, and that'll be nice for comments in your section here when this video goes live. And that's if, as far as trading cards in particular, if you had to assemble a little vault that you're going to bury like a time capsule in the ground that you wanted future generations to see how cool some of these cards are, like what would yours be? Because I would definitely go, I think it's like Marvel Universe Series 2 or 3 where we got like those 5 or 6 holograms zombie. It's like you got the Hulk one, the Ghost Rider, the Thing, Wolverine and Venom. I'm not sure if that was like Marvel Universe 2 or 3 is one of those. Like I think 90 or 91. I would definitely throw in a masterpiece set. And just for fun, I'm going to throw in some Pogs and Slammers just so they could see, you know, for as comedically as we look back on Pogs now, I'm going to throw that in there with one of those tubes that contains all the Pogs and Slammers, and maybe throw in a little coffin case of the Slammers. But I want to know, and this could be cool. They could put it in the comments each viewer's top 3 to put in their capsule. But Vince, you and Jesse, what are your 3 card sets you'd put in the time capsule?
So do you want it to represent like the time as a whole? Do you want it to
Oh,
represent
just
like
like
us?
just your love, like
Okay.
some that's close to your heart. We don't got to represent like the whole era. Just what, because that's what's close to my heart, what I remember, and what I really identified with or had fun collecting. Those 3.
Mhm.
Like, what are yours that you identified with and had the most fun getting to put in the time capsule?
So for me, my 3 would be the Star Wars Wide Vision, Empire, Star Wars Empire, and Return of the Jedi. Those 3 sets.
Cool.
The because I loved how the fact that the cards were longer, they were widescreen, so they were playing off the whole thing of like the new special editions widescreen. Um, the Akira card set I just got like what 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, Ryan, because I
Oh,
love
nice.
that
I didn't
them.
even know they had cards.
And then probably the Terminator 2 card set because
Awesome.
I love that set. I think I have a few cards left, but I'd love to be able to get that set again. It was just so cool because you had all this stuff about like behind the scenes, information about what was going on through the story. And of course, Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. So, but that would be my 3.
Nice picks.
I would definitely include a lot of the products that as much as I recognize what certain other products are to people, I would definitely include the ones that I had growing up and still have for sure. Like I still have a packet of um Marvel cards here that I never put in a binder. I kept them in the pack. Because
Mm-hmm.
that was a highlight for me, the Marvel X-Men cards for sure.
Yeah.
I would definitely include some Pogs and a Slammer
Yep.
just to give an idea of what these were about, how you played it, just to kind of get a little game going there. And then as far as trading card game goes, it would definitely be Yu-Gi-Oh for me because although I collected Pokemon cards and I still have my Magic the Gathering cards, I didn't get into those as much as I did Yu-Gi-Oh. And I mean, I've got binders galore of the original sets that came out because I followed it from the very beginning up until uh, a point where I just stopped collecting because I couldn't keep up with it. So I would include one of each of those just because they're not only a representation of the time
Mm-hmm.
that I grew up in, but also were unique and special to me.
Very cool.
I mean, if I could put in a trading card game, it'd probably end up being Pokemon. Not because I didn't really play Pokemon, but I enjoyed collecting the cards because I had,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of I guess the question I was going to pose to you guys. If there was a set that you could have again that you had or that you were never able to have, what would it be? Because I originally had a full set of basic 2 and jungle that I had in a binder and it got stolen. Like
Bummer.
yeah, so and this was like I remember I'm in high school at the time when that came out. So and I was like I'm not going to collect any cards anymore for a while.
So
Understandable.
I would want my Pogs and Slammers back, and here's why. I have rebought the Marvel Universe and Masterpiece ones that I most wanted. I bought those, and I have at least let's just say like a handful of the holograms I really remembered. So
Mhm.
enough of them that I feel like I can look at that when I miss that. Um, but I don't. It's so hard to. That's one of those things that you can't just easily buy again. And I know you're thinking like somebody in the comments will probably be like, or in the, they'll be like, Ryan, when this premieres, Pogs are worth jack shit. You can get them anywhere. Yeah, but wait a minute. The specific ones I had, that's not easy to get again
Nope.
because they're
Nope.
so weird and hard to come by, and you can't just get a lot and it'll be the same ones you had on eBay. And the slammers are kind of weird, and you don't even know what brands made some of them. And so this is when we're in this obscure wilderness territory of you can't just get that back so easily. So I would actually want that again. I would want I kind of regret either I think I sold them to somebody, but it may even have been a store. But I regret doing that because I enjoyed having those in my collection, and you can't just get some of that stuff back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you really have to know, you have to know the medium. You have to know
Yeah.
exactly what you had. Maybe in some cases the condition you had it if you want to be that particular, but um, you really do have to know what was in that line to be that specific. Like you could just easily say, "Oh, I wanted the um, I just wanted this old Wolverine card that I had." Well, that's kind of vague because we
Yeah.
know there are variants.
Yep.
But when you know which one you had, you can be that specific, you can be that particular, and even create a binder of the cards you had as a kid. Like
Another thing that was
that's an
even
awesome
cool.
restoration task in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it would take so much research to get like even like a portion of back what I had. But the other thing I just want to say about Pogs is one of the things we forget that was cool that tied it all together. Like the dude says in Big Lebowski, that rug really ties the room together. Well, what tied the Pog set together was those little slip mats, the circle slip mats that would have like a skull or something cool on it, or the official Pog ones that would almost be like it would have like a plastic bottom circular shell. You could line up your Pogs along the rim of this thing, and then in the middle would be the slip mat, right? And then you slam them down on that. So it was kind of a really cool way to store some and to set it up for a little mini tournament in your house.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
Mm-hmm.
things like that, just like a toy play set accentuates your collection. Those slip mats and little tournament kits that you could put all your stuff, your pogs in, those really kind of tied it all together too, to make it feel like it's like really a little fun game you're gonna play.
Yeah.
Because you could even buy those too back at that time. You could buy
Yeah.
kind of like what some trading card games do now, where you can get two pre-made decks for a fair price and just be able to play right from the get-go.
Yeah.
That's one of the good ways to get someone invested in your product, in my opinion. With Pogs, you did the same thing. You could buy um, tournament kits, and I
Right.
remember KB Toy Store was notorious for these before Toys R Us started doing it. You could get the circular ring you put your Pogs in. You can get slammers, a couple of blind bag Pogs as well, the carrying cases and all that for a pretty good deal. So it was definitely possible to kind of hit the ground running that way, or um, because we talked about how word of mouth was so powerful back in that day, you could just go and pick up a random pack and you didn't even care if you played with them or not because you were just happy to have them.
Yep. And it's like you combine all these, even more than the trading cards. Like when you put it in that POG cylinder, the PVC that's like a neon green or
Mm-hmm.
purple or orange, and you put the top in, keep them all in there in the case, it's really a collection of your personality. You know what I mean? Because you'll have like 30 different lines of things as Pogs. Some will be like X-Men Pogs. Some will have like the little images on it that you can look at it three ways. I forget what you like, the lenticular Pogs where It's kind of like a 3D effect on those. You'll have some from movies, some the official Pog ones, and it's like it really does. It's kind of like your unique personality in that collection. It's a mishmash of all that, which is kind of cool.
Well, I think of like Zombies talked about his Power Rangers ones, right? I remember you were saying something about that before in another discussion. Didn't you have some?
Yeah. Yep. And I still do. Because like any other collection that we have, what we put into it definitely reflects our personality and what we're into. And my Power Ranger Pog specifically, because I have a Green Ranger one, I would be willing to wager any other Pog that I had except that one. I would never wager that one because that
Dude,
was the holy
speaking
grail
of
of my
Power
Pogs.
Rangers, speaking of Power Rangers, I gotta say that's one of the only things I've been itching for lately is that original. And I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong. That like original command center playset or whatever that you can put all the figures in from that original figure release, and just having like one of each and on that command center playset. They go for it's not that expensive. It's like $100, but dude, that's one I've been itching for, kind of that I feel like it's kind of missing in my representation of all the 80s and 90s toys. I don't have that. That's kind of one. It's kind of maybe a grail along with that Thundercats layer
Thundercat
that I
Slayer.
probably never be able to afford.
It's
But that's
definitely a missed opportunity for Hasbro to not do some kind of build a figure or build a base with the Power Rangers they've been releasing lately. To
yeah,
have
they should,
like
man.
all original five with Zordon and Alpha 5 to be all together in this little bitty playset, that you build.
There's something about like for me though, Vince, like the primitive nature of wanting the bare bones figure sometimes. Like so okay, like so these modern figures of Power Rangers, I'm sure they're extremely superior to like
Mhm.
that original line. But something about the way they looked, and you flip the heads to go from human to with the helmet, and something about the way those looks, sometimes like primitive in my brain, I don't know why it's so appealing. It just takes me back to that time. And it's
Yeah.
like I want the primitive version of it.
Well,
Even if it does kind of suck,
it's the innocence of it, right?
Yeah.
It's the wonder that's like you got these figures and that's what they were. That's what they represent. Um, there's nothing wrong with
It's,
that.
yeah, it's probably like how our fathers like maybe a lot of in that generation wants like the GI Joe in like that doll form.
Mm-hmm.
Like even though that means nothing to us, like they wanted just like that.
Action
Instead of
Man.
like ours is the 80s version. It's like they want that. As like shitty as it could be, or even like the hair on them is like crap, right? It's gonna fall off. Like they want it just like they remember it, because it has that instant connection. And it's like sometimes you want something flaws and all, you
Yeah,
know?
and uh, I'm just gonna say this real quick is like I wonder what it's gonna be for our kids in the next generations of what their nostalgia is going to be for certain things, especially in the age of digital stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's why the responsibility lies on us to kind of preserve that in a way, because, and this is why I mentioned earlier, when you look at trading cards from different IPs and whatnot, the cardstock Marvel cards versus the glossier uh, works of art that we later got. That's why I wanted to pose that question. Like, what do you think is the appeal when you have what we grew up with versus what existed prior to us? And is there a feel for nostalgia there? Is it a respect for things that came prior? Because honestly, I feel like if you don't have that in a way, you never truly appreciate what your collection or what even you're collecting is all about.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
being able to look at vintage X-Men comics versus what we eventually grew up with. having that appreciation for where the book started to go as a medium, telling more serious stories, having different works of art, but just like increasing the artistic value of that stuff.
You know when I feel
It's
like
all
that, Tommy?
intertwined.
I'll tell you when I feel like that. When I see, because I think about like, say I had the money that it would take to get like Hot Toys stuff, on that level, like peak level of like some of the stuff they make and how expensive some of that stuff is. But I don't know that I would identify with it as much. It would almost feel like I'm in like a rich guy's mansion. Like it wouldn't really resonate enough to me. As much as it might look impressive in the house, or you know what I mean, it would start to feel like, oh, this is like somebody else's like museum or something. And what I love about like having so many of these damn vintage figures, that some have all kinds of flaws, and I mean loose leg joints or whatever the fuck's wrong with them. You know what I mean? Whether it's the GI Joes or the Motu, that even when you get them in good condition, sometimes they're still wobbly legs, and you can fix those. But you know what I mean? It's like sometimes it's like that feels like home, and it just like we appreciate all the retro systems, even along with all their flaws that they come with, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, look at the original NES and what a problematic fucking thing that is, to get the 72 pin connector working just right, and then you got to clean it or boil it, or look at all the shit we put up with just to play it because of the memories. Like, we accept all the drawbacks with it. And it's like, so I guess my point with like talking about Hot Toys is sometimes you can almost like go too far with that stuff. It's like,
Well, so for Hot Toys, I would say they're higher end collectibles, right? It's like us playing the Genesis and then your rich friend playing the Neo Geo.
yeah.
There's certain things that like we were priced out of. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing
Well,
wrong with it. They're
you'll
gaming and
see it on,
gaming.
you'll see it on Instagram though, because I want to know, Vince, like, how do you feel like I'll see that on Instagram, right? And somebody's done up like a whole toy room in like Hot Toys or something high end like that. And I just feel like I think that's cool, and I bet that guy loves that, but I don't identify with it. Like, that's something maybe I'd want a few of, but there's no they don't really have the bendability or the playability, right? Of like the
Well,
action
no,
figure
no, they
stuff.
do. They do.
Do
Hot,
they?
Hot Toys, you can put in some really nice poses. They're
Okay,
not.
but then don't you kind of leave them? Don't you kind of leave them like as is, like on display? You don't really like.
Oh
Do
yeah,
people play
it depends
those?
on the collector. Like, the only like hot toy I have is my Big Boss from Snake Eater, and I usually just keep him in a static pose, but I've put him in where the position where he's got his machine gun and his hand on his ear, like he's talking to Major Zero. But it
Because
also comes,
I'll
huh?
tell you what I would wish for if I was rich. It wouldn't be Hot Toys. You know what it would be like? I'd do up a room like it's motherfucking Planet Hollywood. Where you got actual movie props. I'd get into like that shit. Like, give me something that was used in the film or signed, or
Mm-hmm.
I'd get into like that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that's a big money game.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I mean, and we'll do this, okay? Remember, as we say, play the way you want to play, how you want to play, collect the way you want to collect, the way you want to collect. We're not shaming anybody on how they collect. And, some of
We
this
don't
stuff,
know anybody that's got all Hot Toys anyway, so we don't have to worry about offending anybody.
I know a couple people
That have all Hot Toys.
that yeah, have a large
Well,
selection
can
of
I
hot
can I
toys.
ask them if I can borrow some money?
Actually, my Josh used to collect hot toys. He was collecting a lot of the Marvel ones at the time, but he ended up selling them.
No. Well, it's not me shaming. It's saying I don't identify with them. There's
Oh
a
no, no,
difference.
I know, I know. It's all right. Um, but no, I mean it's collecting is can be an expensive hobby, and where you could go and get maybe a vintage toy a little bit cheaper than a modern figure because toys aren't made for children anymore, and the toys that are made for children are garbage. They don't usually don't have any really good playability. They're tie-ins to a video game like Roblox or Fortnite. Well, Fortnite actually has articulation. Um,
So much it's the opposite too. Remember, because like vintage a lot of times on eBay is so much more than the modern ones.
oh, it is
Like they're hard to
100%.
find. You
But it's definitely an adult game. It's not for kids anymore.
Yeah.
My son's not going to be able to go and say, "Hey, I'm really into GI Joe now, Dad. I want to have the GI Joe headquarters or the Terradrome." No, I can't afford that. It's that stuff is getting so to the point where you're outpricing it.
Does your kid
Luckily,
collect trading cards? Do either of your kids collect them?
well, I only have one. But
No, but I mean, you have a kid. Zombie has a kid. That's what I mean. Either of
oh
your
yeah,
kids.
because I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. I'm like two kids. Wait, anyway, he collects Pokemon cards, and we
Okay.
play on occasion. That's about it.
What about you, Zom?
It's kind of with my son collecting anything, unless he has developed 100% passion for it, it's hit or miss. If he's in the mood to want to collect trading cards, like if we're able to get him in the Happy Meals, cool. But he's not diehard about collecting trading cards like I am. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful though, if maybe the right card collection piques his interest, like when he was watching X-Men and X-Men 97 with me, maybe he might appreciate the masterpieces. Um, or if we happen to see packs of the old Mortal Kombat trading cards, maybe he might like those and slip those in a binder just to preserve them. Yeah, he's really not into that yet, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if that changes.
And that's definitely hard too because of the fact that you don't have the opportunities that we did as kids to see this stuff in stores anymore
Mm-hmm.
or collector shops. But some really good topics, guys.
I think
Um,
we covered the gauntlet of trading card. Is there anything that we may have overlooked? I mean, we didn't get into graded cards that much. I was never into that game.
no, I wasn't either.
Um,
No.
and I
Um,
wasn't for comics either because I wanted to read them all.
well,
I didn't want to slab
grading
them
is
up.
really for unless like you enjoy what it is and it's something you want to preserve just because you enjoy it. That's really hit and miss. Most people who grade stuff, it's really for
The high end
reselling
stuff.
later. Well, either high end stuff or to resell later. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's still that whole investment game. But something is only as worth a price if someone is willing to pay that price. Just because price charting says this game is worth this much or whatever eBay says for this price on whatever, if a person's not willing to pay that, then it's not worth what is being stated it's worth. And people forget that. And that you have the ability to speak with your wallet and not allow people to screw you over for a product that you want, but you probably could find cheaper somewhere else if you
By
wait.
the way, after talking about Planet Hollywood, and I know that bombed, like it didn't do good, it went under. But I'd really love like a comic book trading card themed restaurant. Call me a nerd, but I think that would be cool. If that's just all, it's just like wall to wall comic books, like framed up in trading cards and stuff, and like they made a restaurant out of that. I would go to that restaurant. I know it'd be weird, but what's the demo on that? Just nerds in general, but I would go there. They had a good burger.
It would be good depending on the location you put it because you got Action Comics up there with Superman first appearance, and you're like, you see some dude like trying to rip it off the freaking wall. But
Be good eye candy.
Hmm.
oh heck yeah, it would be. I mean, there's a potential for everything that would be amazing to have. It's whether you have the capital or is it gonna have the staying power.
Dude, I just wish this is kind of like a passing thought, but I just wish like that the comic boom could have coincided with the Hollywood boom of the movies at the same time. Because when we wished the CGI could do it, and during the comic book boom, it couldn't. And now that it did, there is no comic boom. Like, I wish it could have coincided into this apex of just like comic book love and the movies on the screen at the same time. And I know there's graphic novels and shit, and I know you can get them in fucking Barnes and Noble, but it's not the same as I'm sure you remember it, both of you guys, going into your comic book store and seeing the new releases that week. And when it was big and it was popular and everybody was getting comics, I wish it could have coincided. I think it would have been added a little bit more fun to it.
It should have happened. Problem is that the studios weren't smart enough to cross pollinate the movie with the origin product. Like
Yeah.
what you should have done is, hey, here's Iron Man. Well, here is the a reproduction issue, reproduced issue of #1 Iron Man for you and your kids to enjoy, to get a feeling of where this character came from, besides the MCU representation of Tony Stark.
Dude,
That
it
way,
was like right around the first X-Men movie, Vince, that it just about the comics just about fell off the cliff and it was dead.
oh,
And then that first
Marvel almost
X-Men.
went out. Marvel almost went bankrupt, and they actually, I think
Yeah.
they did.
What a shame that, that it couldn't have coincided. And you know what? But I'll say this. The good news is at least we had all those awesome animated shows of it back then.
Oh, we
We may
did.
not have had the movies then, but we had in that Marvel universe of movies, but we had the cool animated shows at least.
Mm-hmm. We did. We had a really good run of comic book themed superheroes or other characters that were in the comic industry.
And unfortunately, Captain Planet was one of the animated shows in there too. But I won't get on a rant.
We'll save that for another episode.
I
Oh,
always got to throw in a Captain Planet joke. I'm sorry.
well, one last thing before we wrap up. Anything you guys want to leave a message to our audience about? Maybe something, a question for the comments.
You know what? Go on eBay and just blow 10, $20 on some 80s, 90s trading cards, because there's nothing like opening a pack. And whether it's Marvel or even if it's like sports cards, just go do it. Spend 10, $20. Because I guarantee you, when you get that in the mail and you open those up, you'll feel like a kid again. That's what I want them to do. What's 10, $20, right? That's like a value meal, fast food. So, which is probably even more than that now with current inflation. But yeah, go blow 10 or $20 on some trading cards. And if you want to blame somebody for spending the money, blame me. But I bet you'll have some fun when you open a pack. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, especially if you collected those back in the day. Like
Oh yeah.
I I would sort of suggest the same thing, but more of like a personal challenge. Just to see if you feel that nostalgia you did when
There
you
you go.
first opened up your very first pack. You know? Um Heck, even list some of the lines that you collected or even still have and are missing certain cards for, like, to complete the collection, because with so many variations on collecting, and just like with our gaming collections and toy collections, there's so much variety when it comes to the trading card scene. I'm curious to see what others collected as well, what their prized cards were, if they had them, or if they never got the chance to pick them up, what would they be? Would it be that first edition holographic Charizard card? Would it
Yeah, there you
be
go.
that, holographic Wolverine card that everybody wanted and nobody knew
Or
why.
Ghost Rider.
Yeah. What Pogs do you remember owning? Just what where did the what were the interest level of all the different types that we talked about today? What were your favorites? What were your grails, so to say?
And I will add, find your local comic book shop and support them. Go out there because there's
Yeah.
nothing more fun and thrilling than the hunt of going to a place you haven't been before, or maybe someplace you do frequent, and go look at the card section, whether it be trading cards or a trading card game. Look at it. If something piques your interest of your nostalgia, pick it up and maybe look around the shop. You may find something that you you missed that you didn't have before or you had before and it's gone.
Yeah, especially if you're lucky enough to have one locally. And because if you do have one locally, guess what? Tomorrow you may not anymore because
Correct.
these come up and go under all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
support them.
Yeah, so support local businesses. Try to help them out. I'm not trying to make this a political thing, but I miss the joy of walking into a comic book shop.
The smell of the
The
print, the paper,
smell, the
everything.
conversations, the eye candy, the things that like the overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, there's so much cool stuff here, and just like gravitating to whatever's on there. Like if it was something I enjoyed, maybe look at the back
The
stock.
word of mouth with the owner. If I like
Mhm.
this comic, what else would I like? What do you recommend?
Yeah, start up a conversation. Don't be afraid. But guys, I really appreciate this. Thank you. I think that
Hell yeah. I was looking forward to this one, man. This was a great one.
yeah, we got to come up with the next episode. We'll figure that out during the down the road. Hey, actually, if you guys have a topic for the Why We Collect podcast, let me know and we can make that happen.
And don't forget,
Mhm.
put your time capsule 3 picks in there. What's going in your time capsule? What 3 trading card sets or Pogs or whatever? What's going in it? Put it in the comments.
Also, I want to add, if you guys do go out there and buy a brand new pack of whatever, make a quick short. Film your
Yeah.
opening package, whatever. That sounded horrible. Um, film yourself opening up whatever pack that you buy, whatever it is, and showcase that. Show us what you are excited about, or if it really doesn't do anything for you, you know, comment that.
And tell us what you miss about collecting cards. And with that, everyone, Zombie, Ryan, thank you guys for being here. I do appreciate it. And everyone, have a great one, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Later.